Our circumstances don't define us. Our actions do. We all have moments of impact. What are you going to do with yours? Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Living the Sweet Life. I'm grateful that you're here. And we have an incredible guest with us today. And his name is Jonathan Berryhill, and I'm going to let him best tell you some of his story because it's an incredible story. I've just recently met him through another group of people that are elevating each other and elevating each other's message and just showing up for each other. And I've had the chance to get to talk with him a little bit, and I'm just grateful that I get to know him, nonetheless have him on this podcast. And I know he's somebody who can talk about showing up fully and loving deeply and living with intention. He's done some incredible things. He's owned some things in his life. He's overcome a lot, but he's just a good man. He's doing good things, and he's very successful in business. But that's the thing that we've talked about the least when we've talked. We've talked about relationships and his faith and just how everything has shaped him, which is obviously what we lean in on. So I just want to take a minute for you to kind of stop and think about what are some things that you can resonate, that maybe you need to own, maybe you need to forgive yourself for, maybe you need to move on from survival mode to thriving a little bit more. Jonathan's going to talk about all these different things, but I just really want you to kind of settle in. And this is going to be a real conversation about living with intention and being able to show up fully for the people that you love the most in your life. And hit the subscribe button if you haven't yet. We always do that early on because we all need reminders that we are learning and growing and showing up. And that's what those notifications do. It's not about me. It's not about the show. Yes, it helps. But it's about you being a reminder of you last Monday. As you know, these episodes come out on Mindset Monday. That last week you said, you know what? I want to be reminded of my own personal journey and my own growth. And that's what these notifications are all about. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for being here. And then that leads me to my next thank you, which is to Jonathan. So, Jonathan, I'm going to turn this over to you. Obviously, you have, first of all, I want to say thank you for your military service and everything that you've done there and the type of man that you are and how you shared a little bit with me about that. I appreciate you tremendously for that. And then, obviously, going into law enforcement and your faith journey and just, being a husband, being a dad, just all these different things. I'm just so excited and grateful for you being willing to come on the show today and share your heart with everybody. I know a lot of people are going to learn from you too. They're going to relate to you, but they're going to relate in a meaningful way. And if you're watching on YouTube, this guy has the beard of beards. He's got some hair. He's got a nice shirt on. He's looking great. He's looking ready to go. So I'm super excited for you all to meet him. And he actually has some artwork from somebody that he loves a lot hanging behind him too, that looks a lot like what is on my hat right now too. So, but without going any further, Jonathan, first of all, thank you for being here, and please dive in and tell everybody a little bit about you, and then we'll get going with our conversation. So.
Yeah. Well, man, I'm excited to be on here, and as we talked before, I'm in the process of writing a book and doing some other things, but I do these things because I just felt the calling that there's someone out there like I was, and I'll go into that, that needs to hear, maybe inspiration, maybe hope, maybe belief that it can be done. And so, that's the whole goal of why I even do any of the stuff that I do, because I love to see other people succeed in relationships. My wife and I taught marriage classes, but I'll jump in. So who I am is, number one, I'm a man, a Christian man that, I try each and every day to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And so I fall short each and every day, of course. And I'm thankful that I have a Savior that picks me up. But I'm an ex-military guy. I served a total of right at 7 years in the U.S. Army. I was deployed to Bosnia. I was a grunt. I was an infantry sergeant when I got out. Saw some action over in Bosnia in that area. did a lot of crazy training, and the whole reason, let me tell you the story. So I need to back up. So, in high school, I was a collegiate prospect. I was been recruited by a couple Division I colleges, and just didn't have the grades or the classes to go. I remember Gene Stallings at Alabama had mentioned to me that I needed to go to a junior college, and I didn't know what that was about. But here's the catch: I was in love with this girl. Her name was Hannah Stovall. By the way, she's my wife, has been for 30 years. But I really was just astonished with her, just madly in love with her. Not only that, but I was in love with her family. I'm from a broken home. I've pretty much been on my own since I was 15, just figuring things out. I had a dad around, but he had served some time in, jail, and kind of rough living, and smart, intelligent man, multiple degrees, just, it was struggles, had some struggles. My mother was a single mom. She was doing all she could. So I was kind of on my own. I lived with my grandparents on and off. And so in order to impress her dad, he was a retired colonel, I was like, you know what? My college football career is not working out. I see it going down the drain. As a senior in high school, I'm an all-state linebacker, and I'm getting all this attention. But I realized after talking with some college coaches that it's not going to go nowhere. So I immediately said, I've got to earn her dad and mom's respect. So I want to go be an airborne ranger, a Green Beret, So I went to the Army recruiter and laid it on him thick. Well, fast forward June of 96, I was shipped off to Fort Benning, Georgia, home of the infantry, where all the Rangers, airborne, all that stuff is. I spent a lot of time there, a lot of rough training. I remember going in, and I think it was like 280 of us. And we graduated like 106 or something like that. But I did all that, loved it, got out. I married my high school sweetheart. I asked her to marry me when I got out of all my training. I was there at Fort Benning from June of 96, I think up to the holidays, right around Thanksgiving, December. I finished all my training, intense, survival, all this crazy stuff. And so I asked her to marry me. And I asked her to marry me because when I got to my unit at Fort Riley, Kansas, we were told that, hey, we're going to get deployed to go to Bosnia. And they told us, hey, all these stats. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. You go into things not thinking that. But so I asked Hannah to marry me. We went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky, and I got married, and I got shipped out. Fast forward, get out of the military. Got into law enforcement. The only thing I'd learned how to do was chase bad guys and shoot real well and fight. And so law enforcement fitted up. I got picked up right away, went to police academy 2 days after my first daughter was born, my first child. Probably not the best decision, but, it was the decision I made. And that's, formed a lot of who I am today. And so went to the academy, got out, got into law enforcement, worked drugs, narcotics and stuff like that. Anyway, it was deteriorating on our marriage, just the intensity of everything. And then, Hannah being a first time mom. And then also, I was, a little punk, that needed the Lord. I'd gave my life to Christ at 17, but, I became unfaithful, because, I just was drifting. I didn't know who my identity was. And, I realized that I was wrecking my marriage and everything. And so she was visiting her wife. My wife was visiting her sister in Hawaii. And I called her and I said, hey, if you'll have me back, I'm going to give you an amazing life. I've fallen short and I'm broken and I need you back. So long story short, that was my why. That was my drive in I'm fixing to figure this out and I'm not going to accept no for an answer. And so that's what I did. I started listening to audio books, tape cassettes, back in the early 2000s, we didn't have all this digital stuff. Then I got into DVDs, CDs, stuff like that. I started reading books and I finished up, went back and played college football at the age of 25. I walked on at the University of North Alabama, played linebacker, and then graduated with honors with a pre-med biology and chemistry degree. Got into medical sales and started my own company a few years after that, sold it a few years in. But all these things I was pouring into my brain because I realized the more good things I put in my ears and in my eyes, the better man I was becoming. So I'm all about personal development, surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. I need to be lift up. We was on a call earlier and I said, I don't want to be skiing flat across the water. I want to ski and take off like I've got wings. And so a lot of that comes with, your driving factor. And so I mentor and coach and talk with a lot of ex-military guys, law enforcement, athletes, and just really anybody. But those are primarily a lot of folks that are attracted and come over to me to ask me, how do I succeed? How do I get my real estate license and do what you did? I've got a digital product I told you on Instagram that we're started promoting, and it's all just to help people get us a little bit step further in life. But the biggest thing you got to do is we got to quit drifting. You got to find your identity. You got to know who you are, and you got to know why you're doing the things that's going to be tough when you get up the day you don't want to do it and you do it anyway. That's going to come from your identity and what I call your mission. Some people may call it your why, your WHY. And so I've kind of condensed a lot of that down into, I've started a number of businesses, government contracting, healthcare. I've sold a number of businesses. I currently own 3 real estate brokerages in Alabama, Tennessee. We're just open up in Georgia, but we're looking all over the country. We're talking with brokers in Montana, Florida, trying to grow. I still own a government contracting business, and I still own a durable medical equipment healthcare company. And then we also manufacture a few products. But all these, the reason I do it is because, number one, I love employing people. I love having real estate agents on board to try to mentor, make them better. And the other thing is I like to give my wife and children a great life. And so our mentality is, everybody hears it all the time, we work hard but we play hard. If you follow us on social media, especially on Facebook, we do a lot of traveling. We go to Europe, we go to the Caribbean, we go all over. But then when we're back home, we're working our tails off. But I hope that's what you're looking for. As a long story kind of condensed down, there's a lot more things that we could share. But what else would you like me to dive into, TJ?
Yeah, honestly, Jonathan, that's it's fantastic. I even learned more things about you in what you were just saying, and it makes me admire you even more. And obviously, everybody's on their own unique journey, and it's really powerful to be able to hear that everything hasn't been smooth sailing. Everybody has some sort of adversity in their life, and how we respond to that adversity really then kind of determines the quality of the rest of our life. And I'm super curious about. So we talk about relationships a lot here. We talk about deep connection with others a lot here. But honestly, a lot of that has to come from the work that you've done on yourself. And obviously you talked about reading and learning and listening and all that. Has there ever been any sort of limiting belief or doubt in yourself, or those moments when it's not as easy as it is in other days, to where maybe you kind of, that old you versus new you, do you ever feel any of that? And how do you kind of combat some of that? Like, obviously you've been through a lot. How do you combat those days and those moments when you kind of feel a little bit like the old you, maybe chirping back up, and how do you stay true to who you are now?
Yeah. Have I ever had doubt or anything like that? Not think I could do something? No, absolutely not. I'm joking. Are you kidding? I mean, I'm 48 years old and I still wake up some days and I'm like, no, shut up. I got this voice or something saying, yeah, you're not good enough, or you don't belong in this room, or, those are just lies. That's the enemy trying to keep you from excelling. You do have to work on your belief in yourself, and how you do that is you create your own environment. I like to tell other business owners when I coach them, or I host. I've been to a few events where I've talked at business owners, and I'll tell them this, and this goes the same with husbands, wives, whatever you're in, whatever kind of relationship you're in. You're either creating a culture or it's creating itself. And if you're not creating it, then it's dangerous, because if the culture is creating itself, it's just evolving and turning into something that you have no control of. And so I'm real big on creating that environment, or creating that culture. And what is that culture? And so the culture is, being positive, self-belief, being disciplined, because everyone wants to be motivated. I was actually had a call earlier with an agent, and this agent, a real estate agent, was like, John, I've lost my motivation, all these things. And I said, you know what? I lose my motivation. I said, but discipline outweighs motivation 10-1. Okay. Motivation is emotions. It's a feel good. It's a, and that's great to have. Listen, I love to be motivated. I love to feel motivated, but you have to have discipline. And the discipline, people say, well, what is discipline? Discipline is doing things when you don't want to do them. In the military, they break you down. Did I want to sit there being poured water on, making what they call a sand cookie, going through infantry school in the Army? They're pouring the RIs, which is Ranger instructors, the drill sergeants, they're pouring big water tanks on us, and they're telling us to roll, and we're rolling in a sand pit. Let me tell you what, I had sand in places I didn't know you could even get sand in. Did I want to be doing that? Absolutely not. But what they were teaching us was you do it anyway, because discipline will create way more success than motivation will. And that's in relationships. There's days where I don't want to load the dishwasher, but I do it for my wife because you know what? I want her to see that I'm willing to do something. Just things like that. And so absolutely, you're going to have doubts. You're going to have these voices, but I honestly, I believe surely, I always used to say, surely I'm not the only one getting told this. And then over the last 10 years, since I've started talking and speaking at events, I'm like, oh, okay. So other people do. I remember Tony Robbins saying it one time. I'm like, Tony Robbins, the gazillionaire, the mindset, all these things. And he's phenomenal. I love listening to him because, he talks about, and it's true. The life you focus on is the life you're going to live. It's the life you believe you're living. And so we have to focus, as he says, where focus goes, energy flows. So what we focus on, if we're focusing on good, if we're focusing on doing good, if we're focusing on, serving's huge. We are called to serve. And so that's kind of how, I overcome those things is, I get up in the morning, the first thing I do, and I tell my wife, my kids, and everybody I talk to, if you know anything about me, the first thing I'm going to tell you to do is when you wake up is start thanking God for at least 3 things, and then 5 things, and then 10 things, because a heart of gratitude, you can't be angry and thankful at the same time. Try that. It's impossible. You can't be thankful and angry. You can't be thankful and mad. So I start my day off like that. And then, I try my hardest to do certain measures, whether I want to do them or not. And so that's, to me, I think that is key.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that too, because I think that's one of the things that I have in my experience. One of the things I've come across a lot is people think that people who who think differently than them, and they may be successful, they may be where we are with our mindset and different things, that once we figured it out, we never have to do the work again. And that's the thing, that there are people who try to work on their mindset and try to work on their relationships and their sense of purpose and their intentionality. And there are days that they don't feel like it. Then they think, oh, well, I haven't done the work, or it's not working for me. But really it is. It's always working for you if you're willing to focus on it. And another definition that I've found that inspires me, because again, this is an important thing for you to have your own definition, moving definition of discipline. But my definition of discipline that really kind of points me in a direction is deciding what I want now versus what I want the most. Because there are times when the easy choice, similar to what you said, do it would you, even when you don't feel like doing it. It's also like I had to attach purpose to discipline of like, why am I getting up and sitting in a cold plunge and sitting in the sauna and working out and doing my meditations and doing my gratitude journals? Why am I doing all that? It was, what do I want the most? That really for me resonated, because it aligned my every sense of myself to something that actually matters to me, that I felt connected to. And there are days where I don't feel like it, but there's never a day that I choose that I'm never going to change what I want because I don't feel like doing the things that I say that I wanted to do. And it's just like this relationship with self that for me has been the most powerful thing that allows me to actually follow through on the things I say I want to do. And but that's an everyday journey. And so hopefully anybody listening to this, again, Jonathan's extremely successful in everything he's doing. He's been through a lot and all these, and we're both still listening to the same people you're listening to. We're still reading the same stuff. We're still looking for inspiration. We're still sharing leadership advice while we're still pursuing leadership wisdom. And there's just a never ending pursuit of which hopefully doesn't feel like the ocean. It just feels like you're just sipping a glass of water, right? And that's the thing, is just like you can fill it back up with things that you love the most. And obviously your family is very, very close to you, and I think and again, the artwork behind you that you shared with me yesterday when we chatted. But talk to me a little bit about, if you don't mind, on the way that you balance showing up intentionally with your family and being a multi-business owner, multi-selling business, somebody who sold a bunch of businesses. How do you balance the phone calls? How do you balance the obligations that come with running businesses while still keeping the priority of your family?
Yeah. So, like I said, told you earlier, I've told you since we've been talking, I think, last week before, whenever, I'm writing a book. It's called Warrior to Wealth. It's my website is johnberryhill.com. It's JONBERRYHILL.com. You can go and, join the wait list, and whether you buy the book or not, I encourage all my agents and everybody just to go, because it gives tidbits of my story of, being broken, doing things I shouldn't have been doing, but then there's changing that. The nice thing is if you're listening to this and you're alive, all I can say is, hey, be thankful for that, because not everyone, gets to enjoy the day. Some people don't wake up, and that's the hardcore truth. I lost one of my best friends a few months ago, 45 years old. He worked for me. He had worked for me for 17 years. We've been best friends like brothers. Lost him. I got a phone call from his wife, and he had passed away unexpectedly, just out of the blue. Life is precious. So if you're listening to this, this is your opportunity to turn and change your future, or wherever you want to go. And that's in relationships or whatever. So, one of the things I'm big is being, like you said, being intentional. We have to be intentional. And what does intentional looks like? Well, let me tell you, these cell phones, they can really distract you. They can help you. Don't get me wrong. Technology is great in these days, but boy, they can be a distraction. So, I try to cut work off at certain times, and it may not be the same time every day, because I do run, I'm the broker of 3 real estate brokerages. I own a government contracting company, still on healthcare. Now, don't get me wrong, I have some great employees, some great staff members, but we have to be intentional. And kind of going back to what you said earlier is, a knife, I do a lot of hunting. So I skin a lot of game, an elk, a bear, a white-tailed deer, and that knife will go dull. And I buy some of the best knives that are super sharp when you get them. I mean, you can just touch them and they'll slice something right open. And that knife goes dull. And guess what? I got to sharpen it. And then it'll go dull again. And then I got to sharpen it. And that's the same thing with relationships. Your mentality is we constantly have to be intentionally putting time in, making effort, whether it's, with my wife, with my children. I have 6 children, 2 grandchildren. I've got another grandchild any day now. I could get a call today, hey, here he is. And then I've got another one coming in June. My daughter's going to have her second. So intentionality is good, but where we do a lot of that is when I am here on the farm, or here I'm on my office now, but if I'm on the farm or I'm working, we're working hard. We raise quarter horses on the farm. I don't know if you're into cow working horses and reining horses and all that, but we do a lot of that. We do a lot of riding, and we train horses, we sell horses. But we stay busy, but then we do things. We love to travel. And so, or we love to have dinners together as a family. And so it's just creating those moments that are intentional. And we try to leave our phones. We try to leave all that, but we're creating an environment, because we're trying to create an environment of success. And that could be, parenting. It could be, friendship, brotherhood, Christianity. If you're never putting the time in, then, the results aren't going to be real good. And you got to be intentional with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's something too, it's the intentionality for me. We talk a lot about gratitude, purpose, and connection on the show. And it's that gratitude practice for me is the thing that transformed my life. And it makes me want to give effort to the people that I love. It makes me want to pursue more, because I already feel full of so much, and it makes me want to give back more because I already have really everything I need. And sharing this idea of never wanting something more than you need it, which is something that when you become successful, it's really hard to sometimes balance out that sense of joy and that sense of fulfillment. And so I'm super curious for you. How do you balance this? Because again, as a business person, you're very successful, financially, and the impact that you're having in your business, and that sense of fulfillment. Because one of the things that I've recognized is a lot of people think that they can't have both. And you have, and I can hear just based on a couple of conversations and everything you share. If you're not following him on Instagram, you should. You'll feel like you're a passenger in his vehicle, but it's good stuff,
That's
and
why
he's
I do
always
it.
sharing something good. Yeah, right along with Jonathan. But it really is like this notion of you can be extremely successful in business, but find the most fulfillment at home. And I talk a lot about having people. One of my goals, truthfully, is to be more famous at home than I am out in the world. Outside of the home is probably the easiest way to say that. But that just means daily presence, daily intentionality, and all that, of which you've really been obviously kind of pouring into. So I appreciate you kind of aligning all of that. Again, we don't know each other's full stories. We only know a little bit about kind of who we are and what we are. But I love that there's alignment there, and understanding that fulfillment can actually be found more in the connections that we have and the people that we have. And even just hearing you talk about your agents the way that you do, like you believe in them and you want good things for them. And the thing that I say to my friends, and really anybody, and I consider you a friend to me, and iron sharpening iron. You're talking about sharpening a lot, right? And like we need each other, right? And you had talked about how your family business, and how much that means to you. It's more about them than it is kind of what you get from it. It's about building relationships and watching them succeed. And one of the things I tell my friends all the time is part of my dream is also seeing them win. And win means whatever they define it as. Because of my two closest friends, two guys that I've known for a while now, they're married, and they have one of them has two kids, and another one has one, and another one on the way. And it's something that I've always wanted in my life. I've always wanted to be a dad and to be a husband, and it's something where God hasn't planned for that for me yet. And I have to own some of the choices that I've been making, right? About why that hasn't happened, but I also have to trust in God's plan in that way. But having those guys win, which means oftentimes it means how can I help, as the proverbial Uncle TJ, right? How can I help them as men, them as fathers, them as husbands? How can I help their boys? And just there isn't anything that I wish more for them than success and however they would define it. And it's just something to where I appreciate that you've found the balance of both. I don't think a lot of people do. I think a lot of people they grow up thinking that they have to work really hard and sacrifice a lot in order to earn a lot of money and to have the success, but then they always look back at family and connections and relationships and look back and regret. And we all have chapters, probably, again, like you've already said, that we don't necessarily live in a place that we're proud of everything that we've done. But one of the things that I've had to do with this work is to understand, like, I'm grateful for everything that has happened so that I can become the person that I am today. And I'm super curious about your thoughts on that, around finding gratitude for some of the tougher times, some of the chapters that you're maybe, quote unquote, not the most proud of. And how have you come to terms with that, and learn to love yourself through those things, and find gratitude through those dark times?
So, that forgiveness, Jesus, in the Bible, it talks, Jesus came and died for all. And so what we have to remember is, I struggled with forgiving myself, for being unfaithful to my wife. Not one time, two times. It was, quite a few times I felt horrible. I eventually, had to just understand that, that's not who I was. I had to create my new identity, and I still have to, add to that identity as we go. We always like to say, as Christians, we hope that, a big part, if not all part of your identity is in Jesus. But then there's going to be this person of who you are. And so I knew eventually one day I said, man, if I don't forgive myself and forget this, my wife has already said it, she's done. Hey, I forgive you. And that meant the world to me, but it took me years to finally figure out that, all right, it's done. When Jesus says he forgets, how's the saying go? He wipes it away. It's gone. There's no more memory. The only person that was bringing it back was me. And so, I had to forgive myself. And then that's when I had to start, building myself up, telling myself that I was capable, that God creates excellent. He doesn't create mediocre. We create that. He doesn't create poor. We create that. He creates excellent. No matter what you look like, you do, all that. God creates excellence, and it's up to us to step into that identity and say, yep, this is what I'm going to do. And then just, having that why, again, the mission, the why posted in front of you daily, reminding you why you're doing it. And then when, part of, creating multiple businesses, there is times to where, just like going to the gym, there is some sacrifice in anything. So there were some times in the business where I was gone more than I wanted to be. But then when I wasn't gone, I created that intentionality where I was very intentional with my wife, with my children. And that's how, I've been asked the question, how do you overcome being absent if, a businessman, when you are present, be present. Be so present that they remember that 10 times more than they remember you being gone. And it is doable. It is capable. But then also how I've done it is, you've heard of everybody's heard of the word is create systems. Systems, we used to always say, save yourself time and money is what a system stands for. So creating systems in any kind of business and anything, whether that's hiring people, again, sacrifice because you're going to take some money and put into it. Whether it's developing something digital now there's so much AI and technology. Gosh, you can create a system with just asking one of these AI machines, hey, help me create a system for this. And it does it. So, just main thing is again, I can't reinforce the intentionality is when you are home, when you are with your loved ones, when you are with your friends, wherever you are in the moment, be intentional in that moment then. And then when you're at work, when you're setting office hours, be intentional there. Don't go to work if you're an entrepreneur and waste time. Man, knock it out. Get after it. If I'm at work, I'm working. I am here to work. I'm here in the office. I'm out visiting, showing some land. I'm meeting with, a government contractor, hospital administrator, whatever. I'm being intentional. I'm trying to shove as much as I can in that time so I don't have to stretch it out so long.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you, the multi-faceted approach that you have to showing up the way that you show up. It's not just one thing, it's many different things. And it's probably a lot of reflection, a lot of self-awareness, that kind of comes with a lot of these chapters of, kind of offering yourself and there's only 24 hours in a day. I hear people say that a lot. But I've learned, to be intentional about that as well. And, one of the things that, again, you're coaching, obviously, you're helping people out a lot of different ways. You had mentioned it before. So your book that's coming out, would you mind, obviously the title of it is Warrior. Remind me one more time. The title of it is
Warrior to Wealth.
Warrior to Wealth. Okay. And it's coming out soon. If you don't mind, I know you don't want to give away too much, but I just want people to understand. I've been reading a little bit again, johnberryhill.com. So if you go to that website, you'll be able to see some things about this book. I'm excited to read the book myself. I'm excited to learn even more about your chapters, about your wisdom that you have to share. And when do you think it's coming out? How can people get it? Tell us just a little bit about the book as far as some key things that they may be able to benefit from.
So I feel, Warrior to Wealth came to me quite a few years ago because of all the things I had been through, whether it was from a broken home, an abusive home, to enlisting into the Army, being a linebacker in college and high school, and being a police officer. I just came in. I'm like, man, I know God created me to be a warrior. I know what my identity is. I know my identity is a warrior, and I know for Him, for my family, for the people around me. And I came from absolutely nothing. And we didn't have no money growing up. I lived with my dad. The last time I lived with him, we lived in a mobile home, holes in the floor. We had plywood over the floor so no animal would come up. We didn't even have proper heat and cooling. And so, warrior to wealth is, where I came from. And it's the whole purpose of the book is to help people find their identity, give them some inspiration and hope that if this Alabama country boy can do this, then anybody in the world that can do this, because there's people that aren't from broken homes. My children are not from broken homes, and I want to inspire them. I want them to have hope. And I'm hoping because of the home I've gave them, they're going to be 100 steps, higher and better than me in starting out. And so, it just talks about, where I come from, methods I used, helping you to understand about identity and purpose and what true wealth is. Wealth isn't always about finance. Wealth is determined by what is going to create the true identity for you. And me is, Christian first, husband second. I love being a husband to my wife for 30 years. I love being a dad. I love being Papa John now. I love those things more than anything, and then I go and do what I do, such as real estate and all these other things. I do that so I can be that guy. And that's why I work hard. We work hard, we play hard. But that's what the book's about. And, I hope folks enjoy it. The goal is July 1st. That is when we're planning to have that thing hit a few bookstores that we've talked to, our online presence. I'm going to be handing out a bunch, sending some. But I'm excited. Again, the whole purpose was to create hope, inspiration, and belief in somebody that needs to hear that, hey, you can do it. Forgive yourself, get up, dust yourself off. Everyone falls down. And guess what? We keep falling down and we keep getting up.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to read it. Like I said, I know more and more people, again, following you on socials and doing different things. Again, this is just all about connections, not necessarily what can we get from it, but what we can learn from it. And obviously you're sharing your gifts in a lot of different ways. So I one, commend you for writing the book, but then also the purpose behind the book. Again, we've talked a little bit about, which again, you never know. One person's probably going to read that book and it's going to change their life. And it may change their family's trajectory.
Sure hope so.
It may change generations to come. You know what I mean? And that's the super cool thing about it is that's why we give as much as we give. And that's why I do what I do, because it just takes somebody saying something and somebody believing in somebody one time for them to maybe make some different choices and make some different, have some different beliefs and maybe see themselves differently. And that's what this kind of book is what it's going to do. And I'm confident in that. And obviously I'll tag and share all of your connections and ways for people to get in touch with you whenever I do share this, just so people can get access to that. And I did have one more kind of follow-up question that I'm just curious about. So much of and it's a little bit more deep, a little bit more vulnerable, probably. I'm sure something you've thought about, but growing up in a home like you grew up in with a dad that as far as just relationship with your dad, and just can you share with me a little bit around the desire to never have your family have that sense of saying that they were in a broken home or saying that they grew up with nothing, and kind of what work did you kind of have to do? And when do you feel that that's a constant motivator for you to tell a different story so that your kids have a different story, so your wife has a different story? Because obviously your message and your promise back to your wife was, I want to provide a great life, which meant that you would show up in a great way as well, not just money, right? But I find that so much of our past dictates so much of what we do today. And I'm just curious about how, like, growing up in a home like that, growing up with kind of a different life than you have now, how's that played a role in everything that you do now and your intentionality and your purpose?
I'll tell you, some of my memories as a child was I remember my dad being dressed in a suit and wearing these shiny loafers, and we dropped him off at the airport. He had a briefcase. I remember this was all before I think I was maybe 5 years old. I just remember how sharp that man was, and I've always held that in my head, even when everything failed. You know, my dad became an alcoholic. He I don't know what else happened, but next thing you know, the police are at our house at night. You know, my mother and father are fighting, and when my dad wasn't drinking, he's a great man. He was phenomenal. He would take me hunting and fishing. He's still alive today. Him and my mom both. Um, I talk to him every now and then. But it was tough going through that, and I just remember um, thinking, man, no one should have to go through this, But and I didn't really hit me till I was in the military, and I had put myself in this training voluntarily, and so I was waking up in the mornings at 4 o'clock, hearing guys screaming, drill sergeants, ranger instructors, all these guys, thinking I have put myself into this, and then I would just go back to thinking, about me as a child, and those things, you think, gosh, I would never want my kid to experience that. And then when I was fading, when I was drifting, and I wasn't being the man I was supposed to be. We actually talked about this today on my Zoom call with my team earlier. If you want to know where you are, if you ever heard the word expressive writing, I used to do this all the time. Is write your life out where you are right now. Write the good things you're doing. Write the bad things you're doing. Just write out who you are right now. Just sit there and write yourself a story. You'll quickly see the things you need to improve. You'll quickly see that, oh gosh, I don't want to go down that route. And so, I kept those in the back of my memory. Once I changed, I said, man, I'm not giving my kids that life. I'm not giving my wife that life. I'm going to give them a life. I'll work, from dawn till dusk to make sure that does not happen in my life. And so, again, being intentional with my time, with my thoughts, with my vision. We have control of those things, whether you know it or not. And so, all I would say is pour into yourself, do personal development, pay for the, someone asked me, they said, hey, you've got a digital product on your Instagram, how much is it? I said, it's $99. And someone said, oh, that's it, or why do you charge? I give some to my agents, and I said, why I charge $99 is because you get something for free, you don't value it as much. But if me back when I started, if I paid $99 for something, you better believe I was going to read every word of that. Not only once, but 10 times to make sure there wasn't something missing. There's value in that kind of stuff. Just, I think the Warrior to Wealth book is going to be, I think, $25, $30. So it's not much, but it's those things that we have to invest in ourselves. We have to pour into ourselves, and it's okay to spend money on yourself. Okay. If you're going to invest in something, wouldn't you rather invest in yourself? And so I've learned those things over time, to just pour into myself, put positive things in, because those are things I have control of. But, anyway, that's kind of the, how I've overcame a lot of the stuff, and looking back and making sure that did not happen in my life. And I don't want it to happen in my sons and their spouse's life. So I'm trying to set that example.
Yeah. Yeah. When through hearing some of your story and hearing your heart, it's something to where that's not the easy answer that you just gave me. It's there are a lot of times where people feel like because of what has happened, it's going to dictate what can happen. And the thing that I really appreciate about you is you've basically just said you were making the choice about what is happening, which through your expressive writing, but then also what you wanted to be happening. And when you start to focus on those things, obviously it makes it a little bit more real. It's more accountable. You start to be more accountable to yourself. And, that idea of kind of writing down, and one of the things that I do with people too, is I write down, where are you now? And I write down, where do you want to be, and kind of different areas of life. And just that activity alone can shake up this cruise control that we sometimes find ourselves in, just because it's a homeostasis. It's a human nature to, if I'm not threatened, I don't need to change a lot in my environment. And again, there's never a finger pointing thing. And, we've talked about why do we feel the way that we feel, and why do we think the way that we think? And so much of it is everything that has happened to us has inspired us to take it on differently. But it really is just this idea of worthiness, of self-love, of the people that we love the most, and doing it for a bigger reason. And obviously purpose has played a big role. You've mentioned that many different times, that it's changed throughout your life too. And obviously just even joining the military to impress your now father-in-law is a pretty pretty obvious example of purpose, right? But it's just something to where my hope that people listening to this, they start to embrace kind of who they are, and know that there are a lot of things that have happened to us that maybe we wish didn't happen. But we can choose to use those things or be used by those things. Yeah. And obviously you just communicated, obviously you're using that to tell a new story, to build a new future, and to do all these different things. And the how looks different. But the consistency around purpose and intentionality and why remains the same, of which, again, is a great lesson for all of us. And, and the truth of the matter is life is going to be difficult at times. It may not be your doing, but life will be difficult at times. And, how we respond to that determines a lot on kind of the quality of our life. And like you said, kind of like the Tony Robbins thoughts around, we don't experience life. We experience the life that we focus on. And
that's right.
I just had something happen the other day where I had my credit card information stolen, and somebody charged a couple different things on my debit card. And the only thought that I really had is gratitude for my bank for stopping it, gratitude for them not being able to take out all my money. And then also I was able to learn a new way of to make it harder for them to have my information. But what I recognized there is I shared that with other people that had happened, and they were frustrated and mad, and they were like, man, this world, and I can't believe somebody did that. And I didn't even have those thoughts. I just had the thoughts of like, it happened. How can I learn from it, and how can I move forward?
Mm-hmm.
So that's when we talk about the impact of some of these things is how we respond to adversity. Doesn't mean we don't feel it. It just means we don't feel it for 5, 6 months, 5 years anymore, right? We just kind of feel it in a moment, and then start making different choices. And so I appreciate you, again, sharing everything that you're sharing. I can't wait to learn more about you and see the impact of your book. And so I always kind of wrap these up with making sure that everybody listening still, that they have an easy way to get a hold of you. They may need to go find that digital product that you have on social media. They may not have it. They may not have an Instagram account. But I want everybody listening to feel like they can continue to learn from somebody like you. And I guarantee you there's a lot of people, we're listened to in 48 different countries. So there's a lot of people that are probably going to learn a lot from you, and or share this episode with somebody else who probably is like, man, I think John's a guy you probably need to have in your life. So what's the best way and easiest way for people to connect with you, whether it's for coaching, whether it's your materials, whether it's your book? Obviously your website is probably a good place, but what's the best way for people to contact you, and whether it's message you or follow you and kind of learn from you?
Yeah, I would say for sure, the johnberryhill.com. That's JONBERRYHILL.com. Most everybody has access to the internet. You can go and, it says secure your spot. You'll get in my email chains. I do email those. I check those. I do have someone helping me as well, but I do go through them as well. I'm on Facebook, Jonathan Berryhill. I'm on Instagram at john.berryhill. So there's multiple ways to find me, and you can message me on all those. And then the other thing I would just say is, whatever you're doing, have a purpose behind it. What is the purpose? When we're hungry, we eat to fulfill that. Okay. That's the purpose of it. When we're thirsty, we hydrate. That's the purpose of it. So if you're doing something, whether it's good or bad, what is the purpose behind it, and what is going to happen at the end result? When you start thinking a little bit about that, that's called intentionality. Like, if I do this is going to happen. Here's the result. So if I'm hungry and I eat something, I'm going to be full. If I'm thirsty, I drink something, my thirst is going to be quenched. So just remember that whatever you're doing today, good or bad, what is your result? What is your purpose in doing it? And then what is the result going to be? And hopefully that will start making you, giving you at least the ability to allow to make better decisions or make decisions, period. Some people are sitting back afraid to make the decisions. Take that leap of faith, open up a business. If you don't want to open up entrepreneurship, is it for everybody? I think it is, but some people say it's not. So if it's not, hey, just do the best of your ability, whatever you're doing. Because that's what we're called to do is be the best.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the best way to wrap up this episode for sure. And, the last one, I'll say thank you to you, Jonathan, for sharing your heart. And, we just connected not even too long ago ourselves, but getting on some calls so we can learn a little bit more about each other. And I'm grateful that I get to have you in my life now. And, we get to message each other and share, just things that we're learning and growing. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that God put us in each other's lives. And obviously, I can't wait to keep seeing the impact you're making out in the world.
Absolutely.
And so thank you, first of all. Yeah.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. And it's great. You got my contact.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And as I wrap up this episode for everybody, I really want you to think about the last words that Jonathan just shared with us about purpose. And purpose can serve as two different paths in our lives. It could be the purpose in the way that we show up for others, in the sense of using our gifts in the way that we're meant to serve others, in the way that we're meant to influence them and impact them. But there's also another level of purpose that I don't think gets talked about as much, but Jonathan just poured into it, is the purpose in the daily things that we're doing. The every single thing that you do, every habit that you have, every habit that you want to have, there are certain things that we can control and certain things that we can't. And but the one thing that we can always choose is to find purpose in the things that we do. And if we don't, what happens slowly is we start to recognize that if we don't attach a purpose to it, that it doesn't mean anything if we don't do it. But there is meaning to that. There is value to doing it and understanding the impact of not doing it. And so, like Jonathan said too, really doing that expressive writing. I'm going to take that from this conversation myself, of really writing down the things that you're doing. Writing down, are you doing it with purpose? Are you healing from something by doing that thing? Or are you building something by doing that thing? Both serve a purpose, but just understanding some of the same habits that maybe have brought you through some tougher times may not be the same habits that lead you to the times that you've been looking for, to the place that you want to be, that you say that you want to be. So maybe if there's a little dissonance there, maybe it's more, what are the habits that I'm doing to help me move forward in my own life, whether it's in your relationship, your career, or whatever it is. But just align purpose into everything that you do. And that's obviously why you're here today, right? You're aligning purpose in what you're doing. That's why this isn't an unfamiliar message. That's why Jonathan, whenever I first talked to him, I knew he was somebody in my circle, because he talks about it, he leads from it, he lives by, he even said it earlier, leading by example. But we've all gone through something. But when you find purpose in it, you find purpose into doing something new, something different. So as I wrap up this episode, like I do with every episode, that, I hope that you go out of this episode as you finish up listening, that you're hopeful, you're grateful, you feel purposeful, you feel connected. And if you don't, then instead of scrolling today, maybe you reach out and you create some connections. Maybe you really stop and think about your purpose. And as you know, our goal here is to help you live with intention, love deeply, and show up fully in your life. So until next week, go be great.